So today's topic is sub initiatives and what are sub initiatives. So in our last videos, we were discussing initiatives, and initiatives were these value containers that transfer value to either our organization or our customers for a duration of about a year. And sub initiatives are the same type of thing. They're value containers that carry value to our customers and to our organization. But the size of our sub initiatives are a quarter or less. And the reason we want to have our sub initiatives a quarter or less is so that we can establish one, the boundaries that is authorized for work. So in the beginning of a year, our management committee, we want them to be able to establish here's what you're authorized to work on for this amount of time. So we'll establish sub initiatives. Here's the work that you're allowed to actually work on that you've been funded for as authorized for construction. And then what we want to have is at the end of a quarter, the management committee wants to be able to observe, well, let me look to see what amount of the work was actually done. And at the end of that quarter, what they'll do is they will actually do some sort of calculation that one assesses to see you produce X, which we expect you to produce, and are we going to obtain the outcome that we desire from that work? And if they are, then they may authorize more work to be done. If they don't think they'll receive the outcome, then they may want to change the work or change the funding that they authorize the teams to work on. So at the end of this quarterly boundary, there's going to be a request for some progress reporting and some forecasting. Well, based upon what you've actually created, can we obtain the outcome that's desired? Everything boils down to the outcome. Now, when creating sub initiatives, you want to make sure that you include only enough work that can be accomplished within a quarter. If you're including more work than can be accomplished in a quarter, then you will never finish the sub initiative. And keep in mind, at the end of this boundary, the management committee is going to decide whether or not you're authorized to do more work in the future. Now, this point is sometimes difficult for teams to understand because we move on with the assumption that we're trying to produce this big piece of work and that our primary goal is to build as much as possible. And the more we build, the greater the value and the greater the job that we've done. But this requires a slight paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is an understanding that it's not the quantity or building, quote unquote, the whole piece of the work that we care about. We're only doing this to produce the outcomes that are desired by the business. So when you create sub initiatives, our guiding light should not be producing, whatever the widget is that's desired. Our guiding light should be what is the outcome that's desired by the business, and will producing this item produce that desired outcome? Now, because we're outcome based, what we care about most when actually shaping the sub initiatives is this concept of value. And just as a refresher, value is the usefulness in producing the outcome. So I'm only producing this amount of work, this widget, because I believe that in doing so, it'll be useful in producing the desired outcome. Anything that is not useful in producing that outcome is not valuable and therefore should not be included in the sub initiative. Now, keep in mind, when we actually thought about creating the initiative up front, we had some sort of approach in mind. Given our circumstances, if we do it this way, then we'll achieve this outcome. And so when you create the sub initiatives, you're going to want to only include the work that's valuable, that's useful in producing the outcome, that implements the approach that we've selected. And so, if we think that producing the work in a certain way will actually um, enable us to implement the approach the best, then we include that work. Now, this becomes difficult because in the past and in the industry, we're often encouraged to use different ways to prioritize the work. So a lot of the talk in the industry is about ROA based prioritization, and they actually look at, well, you know, let's look at how much work we can actually produce, what the value is as far as the revenue we'll collect, or you know how we can operationalize it, and how much the business cares about it. But keep in mind, the value that we really care about is the usefulness in producing the outcome desired. And if that's the case, then I kind of don't really care as much on the revenue that it's going to produce, or even the costs involved. What I really care about is, will it actually produce the desired result, right? Everything else is sort of a derivative. So if you keep that in mind, the techniques for the ROI based prioritization, you can kind of push those aside. They'll, they'll get taken care of. Another thing that we kind of look at and we try to mechanize, I think, is duration based prioritization. And you'll hear people talk about like, getting quick wins often when they're looking at things by duration. What's the shortest thing or the smallest thing I can actually produce that gives me the most amount of value, but I can produce the quickest. And again, I'm not interested in that as much, because what I really care about is the outcome. And often, just producing a piece of something, it doesn't actually give me the outcome. Oftentimes, I need to implement things according to the approach, and then implementing that approach gives me the total outcome I want. And so, again, you want to keep in mind to actually implement things and include in the sub initiatives the things that are useful for producing the outcome, but I want to do it according to the approach that will actually give me the greatest outcome in the manner that I want. Well, we finished discussing what sub initiatives are. In our next video, we're going to discuss where sub initiatives come from. We'll see you then.